Okay, so the point of this video is to make a clarification on a previous video that I had made where I used guns as an example in order to make a point. And for some people, apparently, when you start talking about the gun, they start getting their head so far up their politics that they don't actually listen to what you're saying. They just listen for the first moment in which it seems like you might be criticizing, buying guns. And then all of a sudden have to go right into defense mode. The point of the video about when do we have enough guns is not about guns itself. It was an analogy. I was just using it as an example. I could have easily have made it about, people going out buying toilet paper or about, clearing the grocery aisles of all the non-perishable food. Right? So let me try and clarify this. It was more about being responsible and preparing for emergencies before they happen and about resource management allocation. All right. And I use guns as an example here. So, let me try and clarify this, trying to use guns as an example. First off, it makes no sense why it takes a crisis for gun sales to skyrocket, right? Now, let me give you an example here. I have a gun, right? I did not wait until recently to get this, right? I had already gone out and bought it, a long time ago already, when this model had recently come out, which means I've had this, for multiple years now, right? I didn't wait for the crisis to go out and buy the gun. Right? That's about emergency preparedness. Just like all those people going out massively buying food off the grocery shelves, rather than being prepared and responsible enough to have already gotten some emergency food supply from someplace like My Patriot Supply or something like that, so that in a case of people going out mass panic buying and food shelves, showing as empty, you would already have a month, 2 months, or however many months worth of food rations that you could survive off of. It's about being able to be prepared before the crisis. Now, when I was talking about the gun statistics, how many guns there are versus how many people there are, and how there's guns for, every man, woman, and child in America, let's clear this up. All right. First of all, we got to also acknowledge that kids generally don't have guns. They can't legally purchase them. So when we go into the amount of guns versus the adult population, the amount of guns per person, or per household goes up, right? But the percentage of households that have guns, right, remains largely unaffected. If we say that on average, throughout the decades, it's about 45% of the households that have guns, right? And then we see these crises happen. There's a skyrocket in the sale of guns, but the percentage of households who own guns remains largely unaffected. So what does that mean? Well, if we were to look at the data there, and this is where I get into resource management allocation, that the skyrocketing gun sales are by and large by people who already have guns, right? You following me here? If there's a skyrocket in the sale of guns, but the percentage of households that have guns remains largely unchanged, it means that the skyrocketing gun sales are from people who already have guns and, based off of the statistics, already have multiple guns. All right? You following me there on that? Okay, so now we hit a crisis, right? And this is how irrational people are in determining how to spend, their resources in times of crisis. This is the crisis resource management aspect. So going through with what I had already laid out there, so let's say crisis hits, just like it is right now. You got businesses shutting down. You have people unable to go to work. We got a pandemic going on, and people are looking about protecting their family. Again, you should have prepared for that beforehand, but okay, let's say, you are, there now, right? Okay, so we're in this situation, and let's say you were responsible enough to have filed your tax returns and already got your tax return before everything hit. So you got an emergency fund of however much. We'll get into the whole, the stupidity of overpaying the government to get a return, but that's a different conversation. So let's say, in the best case scenario, you got your tax refund and added to your emergency fund with what paychecks you had, still coming to you when the shutdown of the vast majority of the economy happened. Let's say you're in a situation where you have, I don't know, just for easy example, $10,000. Now, for those of you who have less than this, amount, right, and you don't have, guns already, you're in a worse situation. But let's just take, this situation. We can debate how reasonable it is later, to say you're at $10,000 for your resources. And all the data shows that those who are going out buying more guns are people who already have guns, the vast majority, let's say 85%, right? So now you got to determine how much of your available resources, not knowing when more money will be available to you, when you can go back to work, all right? And let's say you decide that you can afford to take $1,000 out of that $10,000, fund that you have to spend on providing defense for your family, all right? Now, what is the most efficient way to provide that defense for your family? If you already have, 1, 2, 3, or 4 guns in the household, does it make sense to go out of that $1,000 and drop another $500-$600 on adding another gun to your collection, right? And then spending another $100-$150 for extra clips, and then with the available money, let's say you spend $500 on a gun, another $150, on, extra clips, or let's make it $200 on extra clips or magazines, for your gun. You're at $700. Now it leaves you $300 for ammo for that gun and for ammo for the guns that you already have, and if they're different calibers, then you're splitting it up, that last $300, for different, calibers of ammunition for the different guns you have. Okay, you see that scenario. Now, let's take scenario B. You already have guns, right? Based off of the statistics that we are going here, where there's enough guns for, every person in the country to have, a gun, and with guns, to spare, but only about 45% of households have them. Right? All right. And let's say that percentage of household that have them remains unchanged. Okay. Let's start off with that. And so you already have a gun, right? It would be much more efficient for you, right, to use that same $1,000 to just spend another, maybe $200 on, extra clips or magazines for your gun, and the other $800 buying up ammo for that gun. Because think about it, who is better protected? The person who has, 4 guns but limited ammo per gun, or the person who has 2 guns but a ton of ammo for each gun, right? This is what I was trying to get to about the resource management allocation. I would say the person that has 2 guns and a ton of ammunition is much more responsible and much better able to protect their family than the person who has multiple guns with little ammo per gun. Now, this is not for those who are avid, sports shooters, right? Chances are you already have lots of guns and you already have lots of ammo per gun, in which case you're already, pretty well set, there, and you just need to scale back, your spending a little bit to focus on food and shelter because you already have tens of thousands of rounds and, for, your different guns, right? This is for the non-sport shooter, the person who is only buying for self-defense, right? And if you are buying for the self-defense and protection of your family and you have limited resources, right? And you already have a gun, and let's say you were responsible enough to have at least 2 guns, a handgun for, close quarters and small spaces, and a rifle to keep people at bay for a long distance if society was to break down. It's more effective to buy more ammo and magazines for the guns that you have than it is to buy another gun and then have to, stock up on magazines and ammo for that particular gun. Does this make sense now? All right? Does this make sense? And if it does, then you understand why it's irrational to see, a skyrocket in the sale of guns during times of crisis. Because if you were responsible, you should already have the guns in your household, as part of your emergency preparedness. And it would be much more effective to buy magazines and ammo for the guns you already have than it is when you have limited resources, as a crisis would inevitably put you in, to go out and spend a significant portion of what your limited resources are to buy a new gun to add to the collection you already have. Okay? Does this make sense now? Because the point is not about the guns or the Second Amendment itself. It's about responsibility and being prepared and managing the resources you have. I could easily have made the same argument of going, hey, part of being responsible is, to prepare with emergency food supplies, right? You should have bought, an emergency food supply before the crisis hit to provide for your family. And it makes no sense to go out and try and split your money afterwards between trying to get your hands on emergency food supplies and food at the grocery store at the same time. You're splitting, your resources up into too many different areas. You want to focus, and you do want to focus by and large on non-perishable goods. So this is, your boxed and canned goods, and less about going off and trying to buy meat that will spoil, if you don't freeze it. But if you do freeze it, you have less space for meat than you do for cans and boxed goods that have longer shelf life. So let's say instead of guns, I talked about, the groceries. I would be saying it's stupid for you to be going off and buying all the meat off the shelf, right? Because you don't have enough proper storage for it. And therefore, this is how you manage your resources, right? Right? So you understand now. The point of the video was not about guns. So those of you saying, I don't know about guns, or I'm too ignorant about guns, because of the last video. Well, you're saying that because you weren't paying attention to the point. The point was not the guns. The point was preparedness and emergency management resource allocation. All right. If the point of the video was about guns itself, now I get it. I was trying to be hilarious about, you don't want to, spend time messing around trying to remember which clip goes with which gun and which caliber of bullets and all that. I mean, maybe I was going a little bit, extreme there on the examples, and try, and maybe you might think that's a little off topic. Fine, but the point was not the guns itself or information about the guns. You understand? If that video was meant to be about educating you about, specifically about guns and, how to use them and how many you should have, the video would have been different. If it was an argument about the Second Amendment, the video would have been very much different, right? You understand there's a difference between trying to talk and educate people about guns and then using information about guns to make a different point, right? As an analogy for a point, right? So hopefully that clears it up for you, okay? All right? Are we clear now about what the point of the video was? All right. So thank you so much for watching and your time and attention, and I will be back again soon.